All right. And we are live. What a treat. My name is Uri Schneider, and I have the great delight to have this conversation with one of my favorite people. Not only a colleague as a speech language pathologist, not only someone on the team at Schneider Speech, but someone that I've known and come to admire and learn from for many, many years, and it doesn't stop. So welcome, Jaclyn, Frankel, and thanks for taking the time to do this before your big days.
Thank you.
So maybe just as an introduction, maybe just share, who you are and what's happening for you the past couple months with Corona and over the past year. I mean, you've celebrated all kinds of things. Maybe just share a little bit, and then we can talk about your journey.
Sure. Yeah, so again, I'm Jaclyn Frankel. It's great to be here this morning with you, Uri. Yeah, the last couple months, things have been a little different. Me and my husband, we actually had a baby girl at the beginning of January. So we just became a family of 3. And then this quarantine hit, so that's been interesting, but thank God everyone is doing well. And at the same time, we continue to, keep on helping people during this time and be connected to our clients, which is great.
Amazing. And just some markers for everybody. We'll probably have about a half-hour conversation. We're going to cover some great stories, some great insights, some awesome lessons. If you hang on till the end, be a little treat at the end as well. And I'm going to be going live again later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, talking about Unit 1 of our new self-help online course, Transcending Stuttering. So you can check in later again at 2 o'clock. But for now, we'll dive into hearing more about Jaclyn and her journey. So how did you, in the post, it says that you grew up and you were a girl with a stutter. And here you are, kind of a woman, talented, outstanding speech language pathologist, helping people in the New York City school system and also in private practice with all kinds of things ranging from voice and stuttering and language and artic. How did that all come about? Because it's kind of unexpected. So, when did you and how did you evolve into deciding you wanted to be a speech therapist?
Yeah, so definitely it was a journey. When I think about it, I stuttered since before I can remember. I was a kid who loved to sing, to play piano, loved my friends and family, and I stuttered. And it's always been a part of me, but the relationship between me and my stutter has certainly evolved over time. When I was younger, me and my stutter were not on the best of terms. When we talk about a stutter, the iceberg is kind of a nice metaphor that we like to use, where there's kind of a small chunk on top and then this mass underneath. For me, that was very representative of the way my stuttering was. And it is for others, not for all people, but for definitely some. For me, the stutter itself was quite mild. If you didn't, some of my closest friends and family didn't even know that I stuttered, but it was kind of the underneath stuff that really impacted me growing up. You kind of get in your head a lot of anxiety and nervousness, and you really become quite good at avoiding speaking. And
what ages are you referring to? That you remember those kind of things evolving?
Yeah, I'd say like, I don't know, 8 to 12, maybe. And, in class, when the teacher would snake around for everyone to read out loud, I got really good at having a sneezing attack right before it was my turn. And I beeline.
So that was your move, the sneezing attack.
The sneezing attack was a big one. And I often got stuck on my name, Jaclyn. I got stuck on my town, Oradell. And you just kind of get into these internal conflicts of, do I avoid answering these questions? Do I change a word? Do I say something different? And you've just got this internal voice in your head constantly that as a young child, that would be difficult for anyone to deal with, but especially when you're a kid, it definitely causes a lot. And then what I'll say is I certainly never imagined myself being a speech pathologist or doing something like this, because it involves a lot of talking and me and talking were certainly not friends back then. But I think when I was about 12, my parents found me Dr. Phil Schneider. And before that, I had been through many therapists, none of whom were particularly helpful to me personally. And, I won't say I was like, I went once and that was it, but certainly it was the first place where I really felt heard and listened to and supported. And I'd say that was kind of the beginning of my journey to freedom, to just feeling that I could communicate with confidence and start feeling that I could say, what I wanted to say, when I wanted to say it. And it was huge. And I would say I was in therapy with him till about 12th grade. And even during that time, the idea of becoming a speech pathologist, I was still sort of, well, there's a lot of talking involved. I don't know. It's kind of my arch enemy. But then I think I felt so, I got so much from that experience that I started to feel like, hey, I think I should give back. And that idea of kind of being on one side and then crossing over to the other side became really exciting. And I became very passionate about kind of giving back those skills that I kind of, received myself. And that's how I ended up here.
Wow. So we've got a bunch of friends watching the live feed, and this will be available afterwards. But if you have questions or comments, if you're watching, it's a dynamic conversation, and we want to open it up to everybody. Jaclyn, talking about a few things hit me in what you shared. One is, you stuttered from before you can remember. But when I asked you, like, when do you remember the unease or the intolerance or some of those behaviors like sneezing in class so you wouldn't get chosen to read, you said those things popped in around 8. That's the memory you have. So like before that, they weren't kind of there. Then there's a stage where they do become, and that kind of goes with what we know professionally and from the research that, preschoolers, it's very different. It's there, but there often isn't the shame and the feelings about it. And then in those middle school years is when you start to form those feelings and beliefs, and it can go any which way. But for you, you had some of that. I thought maybe if you had any insight on that from the lived experience of it, and then fast forwarding ahead to different stages of life. So like there's middle school, there's being a junior high schooler, there's being a high schooler in college, and how it's evolved, and then now being a married mom, how different stages of life, if you have any thoughts on that, how it plays into the lived experience that you've had.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's the stuttering, and then there's the individual's response to the stutter itself. And when you're a little kid, you don't really have the emotional capacity to be aware that there's a response needed. You just get a lot of love and support from your family, and not till you kind of go through that emotional social shift do you start feeling like, this is different, or I'm starting to get nervous about what that other kid is thinking when I got stuck. And that, as you go through middle school and high school, that just evolves because the social dynamics continue to become more and more, significant in your life. So yeah, that was definitely, and we see that with our clients also, that kind of middle school teen can be really challenging. And then when you're an adult, there are new challenges that come, job interviews, finding a partner, applying to college, as we get potentially more comfortable and confident in our communication, the tasks that are, in front of us can actually become more daunting. So I think it's a consistent, I don't want to say balancing act, but there's this need to just there's this resilience, because as you evolve and go from phase to phase to life, you might get knocked down a bunch of times because you feel confident, and then you have an interview and you kind of flopped it, and you have another interview and you're like, okay, I'm gonna use my strategies. But certainly it evolves over time, as life does. By the time I was in college and beyond, I was more comfortable saying I stutter up front. So it became less of this kind of secret, which for me was one of the biggest challenges. And so, my husband, I think one of the first things I said to him was oh yeah, and I stuttered, just so you should know. But
how did he respond? Or you don't have to tell us. We don't put him. No, yeah. What's your memory of that? Because you remember telling him.
Yeah.
A lot of people would be nervous to, number one, even say anything. And then if you're going to say something, you kind of I wonder how they're going to take it. Wonder how they're going to react.
Right. Well, I think a pattern in my life was always that I thought it was a secret, but everyone knew. So I saw it as this big coming out, and he's like, yeah, I knew that. And so for me, it was this big reveal. But it's just, I remember even my friends in high school used to say oh, it's just the Jaclyn way of talking. And I was like, oh.
The Jaclyn way. That's great.
But yes, certainly impacts different phases of life in different ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interestingly, so then you go to speech therapy, and you had some experiences that were of different sorts and different people, and hopefully some helpful in different ways, one from the other. But you talked about, going to work with Dr. Phil Schneider, my father and our mentor. And you talked about the feeling that he got it. I think a lot of people are looking to be fixed. And a lot of people on the professional side think they need to fix things. I think there's a lot of focus on fixing, like it's a mechanic shop. I'm wondering if you have a memory of how you came in, what your expectations were, what you were looking for, wanting, needing, and then how that kind of was met and how it evolved in terms of what the experience was, and maybe any helpful nuggets or anecdotes that you recall.
Yeah. Honestly, I think when I think about my time with Phil, and this is something that I carry in my own work also, is that when I look back, I don't specifically think of, a strategy or a tool. It was more just the feeling that I had when I was sitting there. And for my family, I remember it was a schlep to Riverdale, and we didn't know. Ended up being totally worth it. But
Zoom did not exist.
Zoom
it would have been helpful.
That would have been helpful. But something that I remember was, before I saw Phil, the word stutter, I couldn't even say it. And I don't just mean that I stuttered.
Physically?
No, so I did stutter and stutter, but I don't mean that. What I mean
is one of those cruel things, by the way, that the word stutter is designed to be difficult. It's just got a certain composition that makes it like who put an S in lisp? Whose idea was that? What bad joke was that?
Yeah, stutter is a rough word for a person who stutters, but I don't mean that physically.
Yeah,
what I mean
right.
is I couldn't utter the word. I would say that I had a speech thing, or I had a speech impediment. The idea of just the word stutter, it made me cringe. I didn't want to identify with that word. And if one of my parents said it, if anyone said it, I'd be like, oh, me? No, that word and me don't jive. And I think, when I sat down in 7th grade in Phil's office, the elephant was just out of the room. We just kind of spoke about stuttering so openly, and I just felt okay, this is, something that I'm dealing with, and I don't need to fear it or hide from it. And it just felt like a place where we could talk about it. And whether that meant, learning strategies that just help me talk easier, or just coming to a sense of acceptance, I would really say like the combination of those two things for the first time just felt doable, as opposed to like horrifying.
Yeah. Wow. So how would you say the journey, and there's so many steps there, and it would, we have our weekly meetings and go through these things. We just talked today or this week about rescheduling those, and it was nice to see that the time flies when we have these meetings. So this conversation could go on for a very long time, but for the sake of everyone's workday, how would you say that your journey as a person who stutters, growing up with this experience, has informed and enriched your professional work? And then maybe we could then revisit the other way around, how becoming a speech therapist maybe has been a part of your experience and your personal journey. So yeah, whichever one you want to do first, but how has one, informed and shaped the other?
Yeah. I think going back to what you said at the beginning, sometimes therapists in stuttering can get a bad rep because there is this, fixing, curing.
Why would that happen? Yeah. There's this mismatch. I think I was thinking about it before our talk, Jaclyn. I kept focusing on this: fix it versus get it. And the first thing you said was when you went to see Dr. Phil Schneider, was the first person that got it. You felt like he got it. He understood it. He understood you, and he understood what you were dealing with. And that is a subtle thing, but yeah, it is surprising to us, isn't it, that not every person has the experience of working with a professional who gets it. There are many people that are going at trying to fix it, and if you don't first get it, it's going to be an exercise in futility and frustration. But once you get it, so much more that can happen. So
it's a great point. And I think I think my personal experience with this certainly allows me to get it. I think our Schneider Speech in general, there's sort of this feel that everyone kind of gets it, and that when our clients walk in the door, we're really meeting them where they are. And I think that's huge also, not to just start throwing out drills and strategies, which
the cardinal rule is comes from my dad and from his professor, mine, of just recently passed away, Joel Stark. Just shut up and listen. If you want to get something, we can't get it because we didn't live it. But if we just listen to the people that we're sitting with, we can learn a lot. Certainly, that's been a lesson for us. But you have that extra edge.
Yes, and I think it also allows me to, really internalize that, a one-size-fits-all approach is never going to work. Each individual.
What do you mean by that?
Different. I think, I have my journey, but to say that like I understand all people who stutter would be totally wrong. I think it helps me, but to really understand that everyone is walking in the door with a different story, with a different journey that they've been through. And that iceberg that I spoke about can look differently for every person. Some people have got like a huge top and, their stutter is really big, and there's got a little, beneath the surface. Someone else might be more similar to my story. But
which was, can you just describe that in contrast?
Yes, which was small. Like the stutter presents as mild, but there's like a big underneath. There's a lot of feelings and emotions that aren't showing. So I think you need to, in my work, I try to just, first and foremost, listen, because someone walks in and says, I stutter. That's not even close to half of the story. There's so much to learn about the person, to see how far they've come, before they're seeing us. The other thing I think is, even with some of the clinical work that we do, I do think that there are certain strategies that are really helpful, that can make talking easier. But I'm thinking of one of my clients She was doing pausing, and she was fluent. When she paused, she was certainly fluent, but she felt that it really kind of compromised who she was, and the essence of how she spoke really wasn't there. So, we could have said like, okay, you're fluent, goal met, but we spent numerous number of sessions after that, like, no, let's make this work. We want talking to be easier without compromising your communication style. So we continued to kind of finesse the strategy so it worked with the way that she talked. And I think, that's a really big thing, that, we could have just said like, strategy, here it is, but we need to like see how they're feeling about the strategy. Does it work for them? Yeah, so that was an example of
I remember one girl that benefited greatly by having you in the room as compared to me, that's for sure. And this young girl came in, right? And remember, she had her jacket zipped up all the way past her nose. She was like before her times. It was like a Corona mask, She had her and she had the hood on, and apparently she had been with another experience in therapy that was far less fitting, and it created a lot of tension between her and her parents. And now this was a re-engaging, and you could measure the progress not by her use of strategies or fluency, but by the zipper opening up. And I remember the joy that we had when we were singing and dancing to hear that, she was singing and dancing at her birthday party, saying, I am X years old now, which was something that a year prior had been a major pain point. And I think that's something you do. You meet people where they're at and understand what they need in the bigger picture. Yeah. Any other ways that you feel that, your lived experience has informed and enabled you to be a certain type of therapist that you're able to be in a way that's uniquely, enhanced by your experience?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, although I thought my goal was fluency when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, even, when I was in college, I thought it was fluency. I'd be happy if I was fluent. I'd be done if I was fluent. But I think I learned combination of in therapy and in my own, evolution, that wasn't really it. It was, whatever I had to do or whatever I had to feel to just communicate with confidence, whether or not I stuttered. And that was a huge reframing for me. And I think it really helps me when I'm working with my clients, and not just the clients, but the parents. And now that I'm a parent, I get there's this, with the best intentions, like we want our kids to be happy. We want this to be done, but to kind of reframe, like, is full on fluency the answer to that? Yes, we certainly want to provide ways that talking should be easier. And for some, that means they're stuttering less. But also, that however we can, for our children, for our teenagers, for our adults, to communicate with freedom in whatever way that means for them.
Amazing. I just want to acknowledge some of our friends who I know were super excited to hear you, Jaclyn.
Yes.
So there's comments coming in, and we'll come back to from Khani, and Evan is here, and David, and Donna, and a whole bunch of other friends. So please drop your comments.
Awesome.
We're going to get to those. It's awesome to see everybody at this hour of the morning. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's impressive.
We're just here with Jaclyn Frankel, all-star speech language pathologist, and just super duper person and friend, and also someone who knows stuttering from the inside. And at the end, I'll share with you another little tidbit, so hang in till the end. But if you have comments or questions, pop them on the bottom. The other thing that I think is unique, or should I say outstanding, every one of our colleagues that I think do great work, when we meet them at conferences, when you get to know them, and I'm talking about people outside of our team at Schneider Speech, but all the people that really do great work and you get to know them, there's usually a story. There's usually something that brought them to the work. And if they're effective in being guides for other people, they've often been through the road themselves. And whether it was with stuttering or with some other challenge or some other ordeal, that they had to do some really, real personal work to get through things. I think that makes us far better at helping others who are going through challenging times than if we kind of pontificate what we learned from a textbook. But what's interesting to me, and I know, I just went through a really challenging thing with a health scare in my family, and getting through it was enriched by the work that we do. So I was wondering, maybe the other way around, Jaclyn, is there anything you think that the work we do, the work you do, has helped you, enhanced, enriched, whatever, in your own, as you said, your relationship with stuttering, which has evolved and continues to evolve? So in what ways has the work and your professional life enriched, enhanced, accelerated forward your own journey?
Yeah. I think that once you get to a place with stuttering, like I said earlier, my relationship with stuttering has evolved, and we used to be on not very great terms, and now I'd say we're on very good terms. And once I got to that, you stop thinking about it as much. It's just, you go about life, and I get stuck once in a while here and there, but it's not on my radar as much. And last night I was, myself and my colleague Julie, we were sitting in our teen group, which is a group of, 7 to 8 spectacular teenagers who happen to stutter. And we're talking about the pros and cons of pausing.
That's a strategy.
And of strategies in general. And I'm sitting there like, wow, this is an amazing conversation. I haven't put myself in this, bandwidth of just really thinking about, like, am I letting myself stutter all the time, or am I using a strategy? It was just fascinating to kind of just be back in that place. And honestly, today when I'm talking, I'm sort of thinking about some of the work that we talked about last night. So I find it, the work that I do certainly kind of gives me a little like check-in on myself, which is pretty cool. I don't know if everyone could say that about their job. So that's certainly special. And I'll also say, and we talk about this as a team, I've met some incredible people in my clients, people who I've spent time with at the NSA conference.
Just a quick plug, if you don't know, yeah. National Stuttering Association, incredible organization. Their conference is coming up. It's online this year, so you don't need to fly anywhere. So you can go to westutter.org and sign up. Yes. NSA,
yes. For those of you who don't know, it's this conference in the summer for like thousands of people who stutter. It's amazing. But I had like a couple clients who, I saw them in like a clinical setting, and then we were together at this conference. And so it's incredible to see, you work with people and you support them, and then to see, them at this conference where we're just talking about stuttering openly, or talking not about stuttering, just about life, is a very special thing.
It's really, I think in the description of this conversation, the idea that the person who comes to be guided, to get some support, to get some guidance, becomes in many ways a teacher and a guide themselves, both for themselves, but we learn so much, right? And I think that's it's a powerful thing, because it enriches us to show up for the next person that we're working for professionally, but it also enriches us, personally in our private life. More great. Evan just commented he loves the shut up and listen. Yeah, it's the best way. My father says, when you don't know what to say, it's just a fail safe. Just know that you don't know what to say, and if you listen,
yeah,
the right things will happen. What you said there, Jaclyn, what was I thinking about? I went somewhere with that, but I forgot. But you were going to tell a story about that girl, Vivian. There was something that you had like some nice stories. Maybe you could share any of those stories that you wanted to share, and then we'll maybe hit some of the comments and questions that I see people sending in. That'd be cool.
Sure.
Just those vignettes and anecdotes, I think those are great.
Yeah. So, you know, something else when we say like that one size fits all thing, we had a mom, I had a mom who was, you know, when we do strategy work, we like to do like practical practicing, and something, you know, we can meet 40 minutes a week during therapy, but our goal really is to kind of bring it into your life. Otherwise, you know, we can do all this work, but if we're not doing the carryover, then that you know, won't go.
I think about it as like keeping it in the lab, right?
Right.
It's like just an experiment in the lab. You gotta see if it holds water out in real world. Otherwise, what's it worth?
So I had mom and her son make a whole list of experiences that are going on now. Obviously, life is weird. There's less communication.
What do you mean? Life's weird?
Less communication opportunities. But so we had Zoom class. We had, you know, Zooming with grandma and grandpa. We had backyard social distancing date with John. And at the end, and I said, okay, let's pick 2 of these where we're gonna, you know, take the strategy that we're using and use it during this time. And at the end, the mom was like, I've just never done therapy like this, where, you know, you're really like bringing it to our lives. And, you know, I'm thinking like, well, it just makes sense. But
it's kind of like intuitive. And again, it's one of those things where like, oh, is that not standard? And hopefully one day it will be, but it is something we hear, right? That like not everyone's experience has been one, and it really should be. And if you're a therapist watching this, or you're someone who's in some therapeutic relationship, make an effort to have that conversation, make an effort to take it to real life, because people are not coming, nobody wants to be in speech therapy. People want to be, you know, communicating and building relationships and getting ahead. So it makes no sense for the laboratory to be the be all and end all. I just also want to comment, I'm just recognizing, like, of the people that are watching and viewing right now, Khani, Evan, Lori, we've got a bunch of people here. Just like Jaclyn, they are to be regarded as some of the most incredible and heroic people out there, who themselves stutter and have gone on to become exceptional speech and language pathologists who specialize in stuttering. So you're one of many, and hopefully there'll be more conversations like this. It's wonderful. Did you want to share another anecdote or 2, or do you want me to jump into some of these comments that people are leaving? It's up to you.
Yeah, the comments sound great.
Cool.
Let's
so let's see. Ooh, David, good question. I'm going to consider that one second. Evan, let's see what Evan. You know, I'll start with Khani because she left the first one. And if you have other questions or comments, please drop them. You could hit like, you could share this, that'd be amazing. And like I said, I'll be doing another live later today at 2 p.m. talking about this online course that we're launching. We'll talk about that later. Khani wrote, how do you manage your interactions with other SLPs, maybe in your school, teachers, parents who have philosophical differences related to stuttering? And then I would add, yeah, okay, we'll take that question. And that's what I wanted to say, Jaclyn, just to lead into that. So you can think about how that's come up. How has your being a person who stutters, how has it come up as an asset? How has it come up as a point of challenge as a professional? Because obviously, I guess the unspoken here is there's this expectation that if you're a speech language pathologist, you must be perfect. You know, you must be fluent and tucked in and type A, and maybe that's because a lot of speech therapists are. But then there are people like me that are not, and then there are people like you that are the way you are. And so it might not be what people expect, but certainly there is such a consideration. But what I wanted to say was, Jaclyn, we talked about this. When you join the team, it's always a question, how much do you say ahead of time? And you and I talked about this delicate point. I think that speaks to Khani's question. When is it valuable to kind of let people know up front? And it's the same for our clients. When should we let a client know when they're coming in hey, I'm an Orthodox Jew, just want to let you know, so that if there's anything we need to unpack about that, let's get it out on the table. And on the other hand, we don't want to make something of something that it shouldn't be something, right? So what you and I talked about, and to be very honest, it was something I thought a lot about, and I checked in with you of how you wanted to do it. And what's been amazing, and I would say just to Hani's point from my experience, every time that I have found it to be helpful or appropriate, and I just put out there up front or at the first meeting or so, I will let the family know it's how you pitch it. And so I will often say, look, you're going to have a chance to meet one of the most exceptional people on our team. And the added value that she brings is that she gets it on a level that's deeper than the rest of us because she's lived it and she knows it from the inside. And when you put that out there, what ends up happening is the response is like, not concern, but like, I love that. I love that. A mother loves that her daughter or her son is going to work with someone who gets it as a human being from a lived experience point of view, and also from a professional, from a professional experience and specialization and research and all that point of view. So that's my experience has been. But Jaclyn, how about you? I think it's an honest question and a fair question for those interested. In what ways has the stuttering come up in expected or unexpected ways?
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, I would agree with what Uri said. I was certainly nervous when I started. A stuttering speech pathologist, that was definitely kind of felt a little daunting to me. But I'll say it's been, the same way I think it really informs my work in a positive way. For the most part, I'm upfront with my clients when it's relevant. And it's actually great because especially with some of my kids and my teens, I think it's comforting for them to kind of know that, they're talking to someone who has kind of gone through. And again, I just want to push, like, my experience is not the same as my clients. Everyone is different, but there's kind of there's something about it that's shared. And I think that can be helpful to some. There's always
I would just piggyback on that. And I think as someone that observes and learns from you on an ongoing basis, I think that what you strive for, and we all strive, it's not a done deal, we're all in a process, but what you do beautifully well is that you show up very open as who you are, comfortable in your own skin. And at the same time, and you've said this a few times, and I want to just really highlight it because I think it's brilliant, you don't project your story onto others. So I think when you're in a therapeutic relationship and you're a professional, you want to show enough of your humanity, but you also don't want to hijack the path of another person. And so I think, to speak to Hani's point, that's a real issue when people have different values and different interests. The need for us to be open, and I think you do this beautifully, Jaclyn, and I think all of us in our own way with the right dose of vulnerability and openness to show up, and also to be able to tolerate people's views and interests that might rub completely 180 degrees against what we would think. And back to what Dr. Stark would say, if you can't respect them and care for them and root for them in the way that they need and want, get out of there. So I think the answer, Hani, is if it's possible, and we work together in private practice, so we have that luxury, if we don't feel we're able to align with the family, we would let them know that we can't work in that way, and that there are other people they could pursue that might work in that way. But if we can find common ground and figure out what really matters, I think often those conversations don't end going in two different ways. They end up actually coming together and finding ways. Everybody has interests, and when people feel their interests are going to be jeopardized or compromised, they get really feisty, and that's where conflict comes up. But if we can kind of hear the other person out, just shut up and listen and validate what they're saying. The parent is saying, I want that my kid doesn't stutter. I want you to fix it. I want you to XYZ. If we can hang in there and let them know that we can honor that and respect that and not argue that, but rather just add to that, say that in addition to that, of course, no one would want their young child or teenage son or daughter or young adult son to have fluency strategies, but still be scared to open their mouth or say what they really think. So in the end, fluency matters, but freedom of speech and the confidence and the freedom to be able to say what you want to say, when you want to say it, to whomever you want to say it, that is the bottom line. And the fluency or the lack of fluency is just a matter of degree. So that's Connie's question. I think that was really good. And she says, New York City public schools are a different ballgame. That is a conversation, but not the end of the conversation, Connie, but that's a really good point. And,
Yeah.
and as I said, private practice,
talk.
not the same. Yeah. Here's one. So our friend Nikki, who's running an amazing exercise program, if anyone's interested, Kraus Coaching. Check it out on Facebook every morning, 7 a.m. Colorado time, for an amazing Tabata and all kinds of other aerobics. She asks, do you find communicating on Zoom more challenging or easier when it comes to working with your clients? I don't know if she's talking about the stuttering per se, but speech therapy. What are your thoughts about, I guess, both the efficacy of your work clinically and then stuttering? Does Zoom present unique challenges that make it more difficult?
Totally. So from just a non-stuttering perspective, we talk about this as a team. We're so pleasantly surprised how well Zoom is going, and that we show up for our clients in the same way, and in some ways even better than we could in person. And our people that we work with, I think, are also quite happy with it. In terms of the stuttering, I joke with some of my friends who stutter and my clients that whenever we kind of freeze on Zoom, it's like, is it a block or did you get stuck? But I'd say for me, it hasn't really made a difference in terms of my stuttering. I know it's come up for some of the people that I work with that it's more challenging, but for me, it's kind of been the same.
Awesome. So this could go on, and the questions and comments are awesome, and hopefully we'll circle back to many. I want to thank all the people who are watching, and then just this last little treat. This is going to be available for replay, so if you want to send people over, it'll be posted on the blog page. So the exciting thing is that for the past 4 years or so, as a team, we've been working on trying to encapsulate a lot of the nuggets that we've learned together and from one another and from our clients. And we finally have an online course that we can offer. It's affordable, it's accessible, and most of all, the first course is free. So the first course is an overview of the entire course. I'm inviting people who would like to dip their feet into something totally brand new, totally different, re-envision what stuttering and a relationship with stuttering can be, re-envision what speech therapy can look like. I'm looking for people who want to co-create this together with us. So if you're interested in checking it out, providing feedback, and maybe ultimately contributing to what the future versions of it could look like by adding chapters of your own, I invite you to check it out. You can go to our homepage, schneiderspeech.com, and right at the top, you can find the link for online course. Of course, you can also find other links for lots of free information on the blog, podcasts, videos, other conversations like this, and future ones. You can also check out the group therapy for teens and adults who stutter, which Jaclyn mentioned and facilitates. But this online course is something hot and new. And at 2 o'clock today, I'll do a Facebook Live focusing specifically on Unit 1. So if you want to sign up for free, check it out at schneiderspeech.com, or the direct page to sign up is schneiderspeech.com/online-course. I'll put a link in the bottom. And we welcome you to check out our Instagram, our Facebook, and connect in the future. And just want to thank Jaclyn for this early morning conversation, part 1.
Thank you, Uri. Part 1.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Keep talking.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Let me stop the